Welcome to Coming from Left Field, where we have conversations about politics, books, and current events with your host, Greg Goddles and Pat Cummings. Poetry is far more than an artful language. It can crack open something inside us, let light pour in where we didn't know we needed it, express the ineffable, helping us transform pain into beauty. Our guest today has assembled a profoundly personal and evocative collection of poetry that explores memory, family, love, aging, grief, and resilience. The poems blend nostalgia with sharp observations, often reflecting on childhood, military life, parenthood, and the passage of time. You're in for a treat. Let's discuss. Warm greetings. We are here with Janice Cummings O'Mahony, talking about her new book. Welcome back, Janice. You've been on twice before with other, we've been on with other poets and by yourself, but glad to have you back. And Greg is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I'm in Tacoma, and it's a beautiful day here. So welcome.
I want you to explain the hesitation.
I said that the hesitation is that Greg is in Pittsburgh because the standing joke is I constantly say he's in Philadelphia and then half the time in Pittsburgh. In one podcast, I went back and forth twice. So it's one of those things, once you get it in your head, you can't get it out of your head.
Yep.
So
yeah.
Anyway, hey, you must be a kind of a BFD with this brand new book that you have. Raise your hand if you hear my voice. And just as a background, you've written two other books prior to this, but it was with the collection of other people about Whidbey Island reflections and Out of the Blue, and this is your first published book. How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels like a really big deal. It feels really vulnerable. Hoping that people like it. It feels like I'm emerging, and I know Greg knows this, but the details associated with publication are so huge and myriad and numerous, and you're just kind of overwhelmed. And then it's out in the world, and it's like sending a child that you love out to a school where you don't know what's going to happen to her. So yeah, I'm kind of it's risky business.
And you're retired and you have worked a variety of things. You're an MSW, social worker, written in vet centers. You've been in worked in government, legislative aids. And when you retired, you decided to become a poet and started to write poems and share them with friends. But like all of the poets I know, you made it a task where every day you'd get up and you'd work on your poetry and spend some time. And the fun thing is to see over the years, your poetry always was good, but oh my gosh, this latest edition just was remarkable. As I was reading it, I was struck with two emotions. Or whether one is that you'd get a lump in your throat of emotionality because some of the poems are emotional. I mean, I have more than one read your poems and had a tear come to my eye, so that you get that. And then you are just a smart aleck. You've got a acerbic sense of humor. You're sarcastic as hell. And so it's all of this side eye kind of smirking, laughing. So I'd go from one emotion to the other emotion, back, forth, and I noticed that at the end of the book that was sort of my thoughts. I don't know, Greg. How about you?
Earthiness, earthiness. There's an earthiness to the writing. I make no bones about it. I'm not a big fan of poetry. In fact, I'm put off by a lot of it. Whatever the opposite of earthiness is, that's what I don't like. I find so much of it self-indulgent. I wrote it down: metaphysical, self-celebratory, sensual, in the sense of indulging your own senses, remote, pretentious, and I could go on and on.
Oh, pretentious. Yeah.
Vast majority of poetry that's stuck in front of me, pushed in front of me, falls into one of those categories, and I
Mhm.
just roll my eyes.
Mhm.
Yours is earthy. Yours, first part of your book is what do you call it? Inside,
Mhm.
the first section. And that's what I first read. I just got the book, and generally I don't have the time. I have to make the time to read. But I started reading, and 20 minutes later, I'm still reading through that part. And what I liked so much about it was it's inside. There's a lot of I.
Mhm.
Normally I don't like that. I found it self-indulgent, but
Mhm.
this was universalizable.
Mhm.
In other words, you could be talking about a cup of coffee and the smell, and I could relate to it, and it would bring me back to a similar moment in my life. So that's the element that a lot of poets miss. They're
Mhm.
just so involved with themselves and
Mhm.
engaged. They
Mhm.
dare you to come into their world.
Mhm.
Yours wants me to come into your world.
Exactly. Hence the title.
And then
I
the
want to
outside
hold.
part,
Yeah.
which I read later, is actually better for me because it's much more political. It's much more
Mhm.
about events, about others,
Mhm.
and it was done quite nicely. And again, it was humble and modest, and yet it drew some universal truths out that we can all connect with. So
That's fantastic. Thank you.
I have three poets. That's all I indulge. I have Bertolt Brecht. I have Pablo Neruda, and I have Nazim Hikmet, who's all three share one quality. They're all communists. They all wrote very political, but very emotional and moving, and they all paid their dues. They all were in jail, kicked out of the country,
Mhm.
abused, whatever. So what they speak of comes from something real. And I found that a lot of your outside section came from something real. I don't know
Yeah.
your experiences. I don't know your engagement and involvement, but it's conveyed from reading your poetry that you've been there in many cases.
Yeah.
So I urge others to buy it that are of my skeptical, negative um, approach to
Mhm.
find this much different than most poetry.
So, Janice, why did you do this? Why did you retire and then say, I want to become a poet?
In the same way that Greg used adjectives like pretentious and self-absorbed, I find much of the public discourse, radio, television, dinner parties, conversations, indirect, derivative, verbose, bloviating, and pointless. And a lot of the writing that I had to do in the public sector, speeches for elected officials and legislation and all of that, had a quality of just, oh my God, shut up. So I found myself desperate for succinct language that goes somewhere and says something. And it's not easy. We're all trained to come at things on various on ramps. You try it this way, and then you try it that way, and then you repeat what you already said, and then you're not sure if anyone got it, and so you say it another way. And I'm just like, I don't have time for that anymore. And I thought I would set a goal for myself. There is a goal in every poem that there's not a word that isn't needed. And I know you guys are not big fans of Winston Churchill, but you may be fans of his Churchillian language, his
Mhm.
plain English, his say it, mean it, and shut up. And I'm a big fan of that. So that's my goal. And I hope to just keep getting better.
That's a
So.
good intro. Read a poem.
Okay, well, let me just add that that's part of it. Part of it is impatience with just the words. Oh my God, the words, hitting me in the face all the time. But the other was I am getting older. I'm old, and these stories of our family, Pat, are gonna they're not gonna be here if someone does not record them. And so for all of our descendants, in my status now as soon to be an ancestor, I wanted to record them. And Carol, our other sister, and the artist who did the cover called me and said, what the hell are you doing? You're a woman, a very private woman. You're a middle child. You've hidden all your life. Why are you putting all of this personal stuff out into the world. And the decision I made is if it's not the truth, if it doesn't tell the story, I'm not going to do it. So there's stuff in here that's revealing. There's vulnerability, there's aging, there's a huge amount of snarkiness and uh, eighth grade stuff, and but that's my life. And so why do it? I wanted to form a community with other women. The surprise to me is that men like it. And I have a theory about why I think men like it, which I can tell you, but let me read you the poem that I wrote when Carol asked me that question.
Which one is that, Janice?
That's called Know Thyself, and it's on page 24 of the book.
Okay.
Know thyself. So Carol said, what the hell are you doing?
Hmm.
I am kind, a good listener. Also, I have an MSW, 1969. I detect others' blind spots with intuition and surgical precision. I have textbooks with helpful definitions, enabler, dysfunctional, narcissistic, et al. You might be amazed at what I see and how fast I see it. Under her sweet nature lies fierce competition. Behind his anger is a toddler sobbing for mother. Addiction came early from too much to bear. When I search for my own patterns, I cannot see. Birth order, genes, and family culture emerge, possible causal underpinnings, details glimmer and fade. My secrets hide in a stout box in a locked room behind a rock wall guarded by dragons. So that's what I'm trying to open the box.
Hidden secrets and
Yeah, just the way we all present ourselves. We all present our best, put ourselves in the best light, and of course we do that.
hmm
But if you really want to know somebody, that's not how you get to know them.
yeah, yeah.
There's a tension in this poem between what you do and what you do so well with others and what you don't do with yourself.
Right.
I think that's what makes it a successful poem is that tension.
Hmm.
By creating that tension, it brings up a whole host of issues. One is there an authentic you that you is behind all of your walls,
Hmm.
or are your walls your authenticity? Is that just
Yeah.
who you are? And the other question is, do you really see other people?
Hmm.
Because if you apply the same mechanism to others as you're applying to yourself,
Hmm.
you may think you're seeing things you aren't seeing. So
That's
there's
all true.
there's a depth to this that I like, but I think the one thing that I like so much about it is its authenticity.
Hmm.
I mean, these are authentic thoughts. There's no boilerplate here. It's not just words for words' sake or filling
Yeah.
in space,
Thank you.
and
Yeah,
that's
that was the intention, but that's also the hurdle that I have to jump over, and I've jumped over, man. It's out there. I can't take
right.
any of it back. So,
So I have a question. The poems are so much more compact this time. They're actually
mhm.
shorter and more to the point, and they just you read it and then you go, wow. I mean, did you intentionally um, work on that as a
Yes,
style? Okay.
absolutely.
And that gets to the point of who helps you with the, do you have an editor? Do you have somebody that you can look at this and say, take this word out? I don't
Yes.
know.
I have a stunning editor
hmm
who is a genius.
hmm
And have you ever heard the expression, writer has to learn to kill her darlings? Have you ever heard that expression?
I
Right.
no, but
You fall
We
in
get it.
love with your words. You work on it and you're like, oh, that's good. That was good. I like that little digression there. And my editor wouldn't let me do that. She killed so many of my darlings. I'm like, no, I like that. That's funny. And she's like, doesn't fit. So she would help me get really terse because that's my goal. And then she also had a beautiful ear for when she wanted a slightly different word that would resonate more for her. So she would read a poem, and she always read them out loud because to get the rhythm and everything. But she would say, this word, it's good, it's fine, but can you sleep on it and think of a word that might give us more? So I'll give you a quick example. There's a poem in here talking about pulling a fish out of a river. And I was talking about the rocks, the river rocks crashing like cymbals. And she said, that's okay, but is there a better word? And I actually, in the middle of the night, it came to me, they're actually clashing like castanets, which is
Mm-hmm.
also wordplay for fishing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh,
So, I
oh,
mean,
okay.
Yes,
okay, so that's a kind of example of, oh my gosh, that would have slipped by me, and she saw it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, unbelievable, really
Greg,
helpful.
Greg, when you write longer essays, and actually some of your last thing that you published on ML Today had some pretty flary language in it. I was going to pull it out and say, well, you're kind of a poet and you don't know it, but does your editor, you have an editor, does he or she cut your work? Does he kill your children?
what she does, I
Kill
strive
your
for clarity.
darlings.
Kill your darlings. Kill your
Oh, my
darlings.
darlings. Not so much that. She knows that I really work hard for clarity. And she'll say, I don't understand this sentence at all. And
Yeah.
I go back and I read it and I say, well, I understood it. And I think, well, actually, I don't understand it. She's right. 9 out of 10 times she's right about clarity. And I appreciate that the most about her reading. She's doesn't have the same interest, technical interest that I have in what I write about. So she's not a student of a lot of what I'm writing about. So I'm not looking for that from her. What I'm looking for is a clumsiness of my writing. When it becomes clumsy, she tells me, I don't understand what you're trying to say here.
Yeah.
And I clean it up, and she'll often suggest things to clean it up so it's much more understandable. But as you say, when you read your own work, oh, it seems brilliant. And then
I
someone
know what
says
I
to you,
mean.
yeah, I know what I mean. So the hell with the rest of you, but she's really good at doing that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
I think
Yeah.
there's a misunderstanding about what editors do. I think a lot of people hear editor and they think, oh, she's just correcting typos. But in fact, an editor is inside the writer's head, gets the writer's voice and elevates it. And that
Mhm.
includes some tough love, of saying, take this
Mhm.
out.
Mhm. What else do you have?
Well, I have what I realize, and thanks to conversation with you, Pat, is this book of poetry has a lot of themes. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
we've uh, it has memory, it has nostalgia, it has love relationships. There's some sort of spicy, sexy poems in there.
It is.
There's
I
hate.
noticed that it's very. There's early sex. When you were young and when you're exploring,
Love,
and
it's
it was
love. Let's
very.
call it love. Let's don't make me put my fingers in my ears. Let's call it love and not sex, okay? Because I'm
Okay,
a bit of a
Okay.
prude here, and
okay,
Well,
yeah, let's
looks
okay,
call
like
it
okay.
uh, looks like
high
Greg is
school love.
editing our podcast
I
as we're
guess that
Yeah.
means
going.
you're not going to take your shirt off then. Okay. Um,
Well, I may change my mind. It's
okay.
changeable.
There's aging, there's mortality,
Yeah.
there's our experience, Pat, with our dad who was a warrior. So there's
Mhm.
war and military legacy that was really important to me to try to capture. Um, and as Greg has pointed out, there's social and political commentary, there's humor and irony. There's a bunch of stuff that I would consider kind of feminist poems. Um, I wanted to write about women's experience, and there's a bunch in there about men and women. If you want me to read one, I can that I like.
Sure. Sure.
Uh,
Sure.
uh, this is page 87 of the book, and it's called Sleeper Cell. Baby girls go into deep cover day one. They live among the people, master language and customs. They watch and wait, hiding on the periphery, paid half, given the vote, bodies displayed to sell cars. They learn to pretend they are not special. They wait for the activation code, then get to work. Birth, nurse, teach, help neighbors, support boy men who cannot hold jobs, build churches and schools, learn to change their mother's diaper and take their father's car keys. They retire, unsung, unrecognized, still undercover, lips sealed. Granny, sweet as pie. So I have things like that about how women, women's lives are. So,
You know, watched Paul and I watched a Netflix series on Ms. Magazine, the history of Ms. Magazine, Gloria Steinem and so forth. And we realized this was in our lifetime. I mean, we were 20 years old. And it's almost comical at how sexist things were
mhm,
back then.
mhm,
So I get the feeling that there are these silent rules and operations that govern so much of your life and our life when we were younger, and you look back on them now and you definitely have a different observation about
mhm,
them.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a there's a danger. There's a danger that sometimes when, uh, particularly women, but it could also be other oppressed peoples, talk about the oppression, and they convey that they're left out of what others have. But often what the others have, like men or white people or whatever,
Mhm,
is
mhm,
itself ugly. And in fact, what women have that let's take Hillary Clinton. She goes and the first thing she does in the Senate is join the right wing prayer group. That's so she can be in those men's circles. And it's a victory for her to get in those circles. It's
mhm,
not a victory to get in those circles.
mhm.
And I think sometimes writing about women by women, about African Americans, et cetera, as a white male, it's tough to say this, but there's a kind of longing for those privileges that white males exercise, which are ugly and mean and nasty and worthless.
Mhm.
And then the expenses of that comes at the expenses of those things that women have as outsiders. There's actually much better, be better if men would take those attributes on. So
Yeah, I
look
hear what
forward.
you're saying, and it's a real it's source of tension because you want power, you want to be at the table, you don't want to lose your essential nature. But I want to push back a little bit on men's expertise is always ugly. I don't agree. I think that there, to the extent there are different points of view, I think men with their external focus and their ability to focus on one thing, and I'm exaggerating here, but and their bravery and their determination as hunters or whatever. The poem D-Day speaks to that. The soldiers and Eisenhower is not named in the poem, but he's the one I'm writing about who had to say, "Today's the day. Let's do it." So I don't think it's entirely negative. I think it's served in many ways. You know, we've done a lot with men's focus, but let me just
Men aren't allowed to respond to that. Men aren't really allowed to be men as men. They're shaped into being men in the same way as being someone else's image of what a man is. And so when you look at militarism, for example, I don't say that's because you're a man, it's because you've been raised as a male having certain attributes called that they call male to be that way. It's foisted upon you. So it's not
totally
really,
agree with you.
yeah.
I think I absolutely agree. We're all put in boxes.
Yeah.
And I want to Raise Your Hand if you hear my voice by a guy. I would read that all day.
Hmm.
Let me just read one more just to close
Okay.
this
All right.
female male thing. Decorum on page 91. This is another one, I think, right to Greg's point. She burst forth with a cry, finally out on her own, unmuffled by water. Her mother said, shh, to make her stop. Her father rocked her, hypnotizing her with his eyes. The trance put her to sleep. Good girl. Inside voice was the rule at daycare. Adults turned away from tantrum or tears. It frightened her. Had she disappeared? Nice manners, they said when she spoke softly. On the playground, she was allowed to shriek, jumping from swings and red-hot lava. Screams had to be ladylike, not shrill or too long. Yelling turned to squeals, then stopped. At boardroom tables, she makes statements into questions. She reads the room like an animal, ready to crouch and freeze. She is not one of those ball-breaking bitches, but banshees sometimes howl in her dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that was an attempt to get at how we, both little girls and, but implicitly little boys, are trained.
Right. Silencing women's voices and
Mhm. But also silencing men's tears. Okay.
mhm, the cost of compliance
Uh-huh.
and
So it
um,
goes to say that we're all put in boxes, aren't we? I mean, we're all shaped by others.
Yes.
So there's no real
mhm,
essence.
mhm.
And when we try to shape our own essence, we too often try to emulate somebody else's idea of what our essence should be.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's all true.
Let me let me change the move the subject a little bit.
Sure.
W- we're Irish family, clannish,
Hmm.
obnoxious when we're around our
Oh yeah.
spouses because we're so self-absorbed in our own little cult of
Well, we're very witty also. And you
oh
don't,
well,
you want to show people that.
All right, great
whatever.
singers. You guys are all great singers, aren't you? I
Oh, we're
thought,
all singers. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's
What,
the best singers in the
yeah.
world, and
So
actors too, great actors, Irish actors.
anyway,
Stereotypes.
it's quite off. It's quite apparent. There's a couple of themes in your book that you could maybe read a poem to discuss. One is the how important the trauma that our father experienced as a combat veteran in both Korea and in the South Pacific, as did many of our peers, Greg, who went to
Mhm.
Vietnam. I mean, how many people do you know that are in their mid 70s that are still suffering
Yeah.
horribly from things that occurred when they were 19? And so
Yeah.
one of the themes is, and I'm not so sure that I understood trauma and combat trauma until I was much, much older, until my father
Hmm.
was almost dead.
Hmm.
That I realized that much of his life was shaped by PTSD and so
Hmm.
forth. And I'm sure that that's a theme that is apparent with a lot of families of our baby boomer families that came
Hmm.
back from the war and started having kids and buying houses and yet never really talked about or discussed or dealt with that trauma.
Hmm. Yeah.
What what are your thoughts of that? Any poems that come to mind that express that or
Yes. Let's see. Let me just take a look here. There's a couple that I wrote about our dad, with respect to that. Um, let
I,
me,
I'll tell you what,
okay.
while you're looking, I'll read one.
Oh, do it.
I want to do Morning Glory. I don't read very well just off the cuff, but I've been helping you a little bit with some of your social media. And I actually did a little short 1 minute video of Morning Glory, which is the reading. So let me play that and insert
Oh,
that
that's great. I
here,
love that.
and
Yeah.
then we'll just see how that goes.
Okay.
So, for some background about this, my dad was in Saipan in a horrible situation where he was supporting the Marines, the hero, the raising of the flags, and it was just terrible combat. And my It was all secret. My mother could send him packages and decided to send him some morning glory seeds to just spruce things up, which turned out to overtake the island. If you go to Saipan now, you'll see articles about how morning glories have taken over this island. So
Mhm.
it became what do they call it? Not an
Invasive
indigenous,
species.
invasive species.
Yeah.
Morning glories. She wrote him every day for the duration, letters flowing to tiny Pacific islands. Once she sent him morning glory seeds to plant in Saipan soil, where he slept in a tent with his crew. They flew bullets and cigarettes to Marines, brought out the wounded and dead. She wanted him to think of home. The blue flowers invaded, a ferocious army engulfing and suffocating native plants, killing crops and destroying habitat. They were as beautiful as exploding shells. Every morning there were more flashes of blue. Every evening more ruin under their vines. Blossoms deadly as bombs. There you go. Morning glory.
And that's a perfect example of a family story that when you and I die, if we hadn't said this or told our kids, this story would be lost. No one would
Right.
know where the morning glories came from. So
And I
let me
read
read
the
this, the next page, Navigator, which is
okay.
what our dad did. He flew the bloody South Pacific, landing under fire to supply Marines, carrying out wounded and dead, and a samurai sword he would not explain. He came home, dark and gaunt, stiff to hug, diminished. He had silk pajamas for us. They did not fit. We had grown. Uniforms and sword went back to the back of his closet until orders came to fly over frozen Korean mountains. Unarmed and unafraid was his squadron's motto. He came home again with more he would not say. We learned not to touch him while he slept, but to awaken him from across the room, calling his name to avoid a sudden blow he never meant to land.
Those
Mhm.
last 5 lines are really emotionally a fist to the chest. They're really powerful.
Yeah,
And Janice, after you retired, you volunteered at a vet center, didn't you?
I did for
And
several years. Yeah.
firsthand witnessed and reflected upon and learned about these patterns that are apparent in
Yes.
all of our young soldiers, men and women who've
Mhm.
had the trauma of combat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Would you read one for me?
I would be delighted, my friend.
I uh, I thought about reading it, but you read so well, and the poem is too good for me to butcher. So let me ask you. It's called First World Musing,
Okay.
and when I read it, it jarred my mind, and I thought of that Simon and Garfunkel tune, "Old Friends."
Uh-huh.
It has some of the same kind of theme, but please read that for us.
Okay. All right. That's here we go.
Page 92.
Right. This was getting into being a little bit snarky because I live in a very I live in on Whidbey Island, which is a very there are elements of very upper class uh wealthy people, and I was getting kind of sick of them. Um, not altogether wealthy, of course. Greg, you know this.
It shows.
Yeah. First world musing. Last night, the steak wasn't cooked to our liking. Frankly, overpriced for what you get. Everything a la carte. Portions small. We could have grilled at home and had a better dessert. We talked of weekend tourists who drive like idiots. They pull out right in front of you, gazing at the view. They crowd the grocery store and buy all the decent bread. RVs and bike racks mean tourists everywhere. Thank God the ferry holds some of them at bay. Across the water, it is ugly, but our island stays pristine, so we tolerate the annoying vessel waits. If the wind shifts, we'll get California wildfire smoke. There could be a coffee shortages if trade wars worsen. Avocados are already so expensive as fields burn. Saturday farmers market, not as much fun as it once was. We're troubled by the misery in other places, the age-old litany of fire, flood, war, and plague. We're okay so far, but what losses might be coming? We've come to count on all we have. How much suffering would we have to endure if all human pain were averaged out and we each took our share? Would that be more fair? It might be too much for us to bear. Or is it our job to offer thanks for bounty, clear skies, calm streets, and clean water? We are keeping the channels of gratitude open while pitying those whose work is to suffer.
Oh, I like that. That's very Brechtian.
That was one of my favorite poems because it just captures this how people are oblivious at times
It's
to
upper middle class
Mhm.
right.
arrogance and self-importance and
But Greg,
But
we
they
do
mean
talk
well.
about what's fair, and we do pity. We have pity for those
uh-huh,
people.
of
Yeah,
course. It's just
yeah,
not the sort of thing that we do.
yeah. I mean,
It's like when everybody's kids go off to war and you thank them for their service and you say, well, what about your son who's 19? Oh, it's not the sort of thing we do.
no, he's in grad school.
Yeah, he's in
Yeah,
graduate, or he's a year away in France to find
yeah.
himself.
He's on his gap year.
Yeah. And so but I thought this was really well done. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't exaggerated. But it's Brechtian. It really captures that distance from reality that many
Yeah,
people
that's my intent.
join.
That's my intention. Thank you for noticing.
When I get together with a lot of people that are wealthier and so forth,
Hmm.
they're all good people, but at times they're just blind to how they come off and don't show the empathy that maybe that they should. I don't know. I'm not saying that very well.
No, you're saying it perfectly well, and I think that's a dilemma. But and if you think about Pat, what people in our family have done, I mean, you've been in the trenches in low income, underfunded, um, terrible public schools. I've been in juvenile court and jails and in law enforcement doing crisis intervention. Carol has been out on patrol. Sharon and Ann are both teachers and psychologists. I mean, I don't know why it is that all five of us wound up kind of in the trenches beyond white middle classdom, but we did.
Right.
And that is a privilege to understand in a deeper way that
And,
most people don't have. Greg's, understands from his union experience and organizing experience, but what do you do if
right.
I don't
And
know.
I was oblivious until I did start working in
Right.
poor neighborhoods. I mean, I was so what I mean is that I don't want to cast aspersions. It's just that sometimes your experiences lend you to certain behaviors and it's not your fault and there you go.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
But it could be easily pressed hard into politics, which you don't do here. And I'm glad you didn't do it here because maybe it'll make people think if you push it into politics, they'll react and they'll recoil from it. But the truth is, it is our political problem, and that is that people in the middle strata, particularly upper middle strata, which is a big part of our society,
Hmm.
they do not understand or relate to or have empathy for others. Today's Wall Street Journal has an article about, oddly enough, you won't read it in the New York Times because I think anyone that reads the New York Times is in this crowd that you're writing about. But in the Wall Street Journal, they talk about these people in upstate New York who are making a decent amount of money. But some are single parents, but they're all on the cutting edge. Their lives are about to collapse. It just takes one little push for them to go over.
Hmm.
And it identifies it in a broad way and not a poetic way. That's your job, but in terms of the numbers. They account for 50%. 50% of children in this country are on that knife edge. Imagine that 50%, half the kids in America are
Mhm.
on that knife edge, as the Wall Street Journal says,
Mhm.
of all places.
Mhm.
And yet people go about their quiet ways on the island and they just wish the steak. I didn't ask for it to be well done. They know I like it medium rare here. I don't know why they offended me like that. And, I saw it because I was in the wine industry and I rubbed shoulders with people like that for most of my career. But it's a distance from their world and the real world. And I call it the real world because most people are in that world. They're not in their world.
Mhm.
Sometimes it seems that way, but they're not.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So, Greg, you mentioned sort of political and current events, and I have two in here that are pretty, I think, pretty well, I feel pretty hard hitting. One about the murder of the Amish school children in Pennsylvania, and the other about the murder of the school children in Uvalde, Texas. They're on page 80 and 81. Do you guys have a choice of which one you'd like to hear?
You, they're both,
Uvalde?
yeah, do Uvalde. I
Well,
liked you.
people,
I
yeah,
remember,
people know that.
yes.
Yes.
Uvalde lament. The priest dons vestments over a crisis of faith he must hide from his people. They count on him for miracles, change hatred to forgiveness, despair to hope, death to resurrection, bodies and blood of their children back into the daily bread of life. For years, he married young lovers, baptized their babies, and so he will do his best. He learned about TikTok for one funeral, a little girl's astronaut dreams for another, Cub Scout projects for another. He will watch videos of children learning to walk, egg hunts in new Easter clothes, toothless grins. He will sanctify the caskets made to look like rocket ships or fairy tale carriages. He will see the grief of modest people who pray, God, help us. For tomorrow, he must Google who Princess Moana is. Then he will sit in the dark.
That poem reminded me a little bit of Adolescence, the Netflix series.
Mhm.
Of, when you said he's going to have to Google who the Prince Milani is and how the police officers investigating the murder of a teenager murdering his classmate
Mhm.
was unaware of sort of the social culture that's surrounding them. Janice, that was so good because it's good on 2 points. It's hard for these priests with the crisis of faith and the problem of comfort, and um,
Yeah,
it's hard on
I
them
can't even
too.
imagine. I
Can't
can't
even
even imagine.
imagine. And you took that and treated it respectfully, not as if, what are you going to pray, thoughts and prayers and making a
Mhm.
smartly joke about that. You truly captured him doing his job, but just the futility of it all, the weight of his rituals, and I don't know. I
Well, it was a Mexican American community, mostly Catholic, and the priest the local parish priest had to do funeral after funeral after funeral.
You
And I
know,
started to think about what that must have been like. So,
sitting in darkness.
yeah,
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to keep it together.
Oh, well, that's kind of a bummer.
Okay, so
how
let
about
me
a, how
just
about
tell
a,
you.
how about a
Okay.
snarky one? Can I
Oh, you
read
want
Yeah,
to
one?
yeah.
start?
Let's
You
let's
want to
get
have a
that. I
snarky
mean, good.
one?
I
I've
did
got the
bad
lump in
art.
my
Bad
throat. I
art
wanted
is
to.
snarky.
Pardon me.
Bad art.
Yeah, bad art. Do you want to read that, Greg?
Oh, I could, but I think you read it better.
I mean, if you want to read it, I'd love to hear you read it.
Okay, let me take a shot at it. I don't read.
Okay, okay. I
Bad
love.
art. Dogs playing cards, different breeds, shot glasses of whiskey, poker chips and cigars, bandanas, some derbies. A dusky lady, perfect round breasts, nipples perky, tropical fruit basket on her head, fluorescent paint blaring from black velvet. Woodland scene with birches and a creek, an out-of-scale deer with a fawn or two, a lowering winter sky, only 3 shades of green for the whole forest. Take these paintings to a Brooklyn gallery. Announce the exhibit, Americana, invitation only. Serve cheese, crackers, and wine. This is how bad art makes good. Fray it from smoky pool rooms and the faded walls of motels. Burnish it with irony. Count your money.
Then you did that so well, and it makes
That's
me
good.
laugh hearing you read it. It's
Well,
so funny.
you wrote it. It's good.
Oh,
I like a little bit of cynicism. I like snarkiness, and
good.
it's got it. Good job. Good
I like
job.
it too. I like it too.
So we can't, we're kind of winding this podcast up, but we have to promote your book. People need to buy this book. Up, wrong side. And the best way to find out about the book is to go to your website, and you are Janice Cummings O'Mahony, not with an
Mhm.
E, but O'Mahony.
Mhm.
But your website is shortened, and it's just Janice O'Mahony.
Mhm.
And if they go to that, they will be able to link to find the book. You're doing all of your appearances. You're doing a reading at in Langley or Freeland in Freeland, which is on
Yeah.
Whidbey Island. Background about your other books. You've written other books. So JaniceO'Mahony.com, and that'll get to the book. Hey, what's new? What's anything new with you? Anything new going on?
You know, the analogy I want to say is that, and this is such a female analogy, but I feel like I have been expecting for a long time, went through a very hard labor, not knowing how it was going to come out, kids out. I'm kind of in recovery, and switching to now raising this thing, which is a much different way of thinking. It's much less creative. There's much more promotion, getting the books into the library system and taking it to the local bookstores and contacting bookstores to do readings. And friends are doing readings at their house. And it's a different way of being in the world. So I'm kind of adjusting to it. But yeah, it's been quite a process.
Yeah, yeah. Where you're getting good reviews and good, great reviews on Amazon, and you got to be proud. I mean, no, but it's just anyway. I want you to be really famous and everything, and have fancy
You and
cocktail
you and
parties,
Greg are by far more famous than I am.
and
Oh,
and
yeah.
invite us to cocktail parties in Manhattan, at, New
Mhm.
York Magazine or whatever.
I want
So
to go to the Brooklyn Gallery. Yeah.
yeah, good,
Yeah, of
Uh-huh.
good.
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was on my way to Costco's this morning, and I'm listening to NPR, and they were talking about first love, and immediately I thought about what we're going to be doing this afternoon in the book and so on. And I'm listening, and I said, "What is it I don't like about this, and I like about the book and your discussion of love, the awkwardness of first love?" It kept coming up again and again about how people were uncomfortable when they were in love in high school. They were uncomfortable on their first date. They were uncomfortable. Well, you're supposed to be uncomfortable in those situations.
Hmm.
So when you write about it, you share that discomfort. You don't condemn it. You don't look for exits from it. It's
Hmm.
meant to be uncomfortable. It must be uncomfortable.
It's a whole new world with no equipment, no instructions.
And this show is trying to find ways to make it comfortable. When
Hmm.
Hmm.
it's impossible, if it's comfortable, it's wrong.
Hmm.
So I thank you for your
Agree.
poetry because your poetry is authentic.
Oh,
And
it means a lot to me, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got my first poetry in young love. Here's a story. This is a picture, if you can't see it, if you're listening to it, it's a picture of me in 1972 reading poetry to Paula
Oh
on our
my
one of our
gosh.
very first dates. And
Wow.
as a pickup line, I used to say, "Do you want to come back to my place and I'll read you some poetry from my father, E. E. Cummings."
Oh, you
And
little
Oh,
scamp.
little scam.
ooh,
And then I would
Oh,
read and
ooh.
it was such a cliche of me
Did
doing
it
this.
work? Did
Oh,
it work?
I don't know. Who knows? Nothing, everything
well, no,
worked.
you've been married for how many
Been
years?
married for
Must
a
have
long
taken.
time, but it was a standing joke with all my friends. So I got that picture from a friend from college who said, "Hey, do you remember when you used to read your girlfriend's GE Cummings?" And she said, so there you go.
Oh,
The
that I didn't
awkwardness
know
of the
that,
first
Pat.
love and E. Cummings in just spring when the world is ludmuscious and the
Whatever, you
book
don't have to
whatever.
remember
I can't
anymore.
remember. I used to have it in memory. I can't
I
remember.
thought Paula was smarter than that. I thought
Oh,
Paula.
she just I'm sure she knew I was full of crap back then too, but whatever.
Oh my gosh.
So, okay, this has been fun, and I just and um you've got some readings coming up, and they can go to your
Mhm.
website or Facebook to find out about that.
Yeah.
And sharing the book with have you shared the book with some of your poet friends? Have you got some feedback from them?
Yeah. Yes. I have, and there are a couple people where the jury's out. Speaking of vulnerability, I'm kind of waiting to hear from a couple that, and I hope they like it. But I guess aesthetically, people have
Hmm.
different things that
Hmm.
they like.
Sure,
So
sure, sure.
anyway, yeah.
Well, the
Well,
people that
But I appreciate you inviting me and being so positive and taking time from what you usually do to do
yeah,
this. I've been looking forward to it, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah, we're
Thank you.
pretty big fancy podcasters, and
Hmm.
getting our show's a real big deal. So
Hmm.
congratulations,
Yeah.
thanks,
Janice.
Janice. Thanks much.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
Greg.
good.
Thank you, Greg,
Okay,
for all of your thoughts. And Pat, sweetie, thank you for everything.
been a lot of fun. Okay,
Okay.
goodbye now.
Bye bye.
Bye.